things like Confucius and some of those Eastern philosophers and stuff. But there's so much that is so passed down because they wrote great talk about it. And then so much of the history we have is because
so long we're on that train.
Fantastic enough that
Salud.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Joe and Doug Show. Joe, how are you? It is
Amazing.
beautiful today. It is rainy here in Youngstown.
Sarcasm, if you can't see.
Yeah. No, it was a good day. It was very productive at staff meeting. Got invited into a couple different meetings. I was on a Zoom call this afternoon, which was a lot of fun because it was about traveling to Israel for trips. And as of today, March 1st, Israel is open to everyone, unvaccinated, vaccinated, in between. The skies are open. So people are excited about that. And I can't wait to get a trip together and go. So
cool.
Yeah.
So let me tell you about this, and maybe it'll spark the topic of our show if you don't already have one.
Go ahead.
Do you have one already?
Go ahead.
Don't make me feel bad. Say you came in here blank.
Go ahead. You're good.
So I went to I went to a job fair. We hosted YSU hosted a job fair.
Yeah.
We went in there with Youngstown Computers, see if we can get into these new prospects right out of college. And I'll tell you, like when I interview people right out of college and people who have been in the workforce, it's night and day. Like they are so hopeful and so optimistic.
Oh, yeah.
And they like no one has told them of impossibilities yet.
Yep.
But then people get jaded as time goes on, and they get more and more convinced that impossibilities exist. And I was like wondering how you get people back to have those virgin eyes and those, go ahead. What do you think can get people back to that?
I don't know if you can. There's a reason. There's a scripture, Joe.
Early on in the show,
we're
already scripturing.
The Bible says, above all else, guard your heart, because out of it flow all the issues of life. And can a heart be, reintroduced to innocence? Sure. But that is a process that not many people are willing to go through. And so once you've grown cold and jaded and all that, it's really going to take a supernatural kind of shift in your mindset, heart. Something's got to come along that really shakes you out of that. And I'll say it from my perspective. So I came into youth ministry, and I'm pretty optimistic as it is. And I came in even more idealistic and optimistic, like we're taking over the world. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I had several well-meaning pastors in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that have been doing it for a while. And, I would get frustrated. Like, I don't understand. Like, you can't just, and you're just not committed. I'd be so frustrated because it was just like, well, we'll cancel this or we'll change. And it was all laissez-faire with certain things, or I would get real frustrated because, somebody would make a negative comment about something that would throw me sour for a whole day. And I'm talking when I'm like 20, 21, 22, like just fresh out of Bible school. And I remember I had two different pastors. They were both older, and something would happen that a plan would blow up in your face, or a project that you were working on would fail. And they were well-meaning, but they put their arm around you, or come into your office and you'd be frustrated or upset or whatever. And they would say, well, welcome to the ministry. Like, this is just what to expect. Right. People aren't going to show up like that. People aren't going to be committed like that. People aren't going to give like that. People aren't going to serve like that. Just get used to it, pal. Yeah. Was kind of the thing. And I can remember in my office, that made my blood boil the first time somebody ever, told me like, you just, failure's part of the deal, get used to it. People don't respond, you got all your ideals, and I'm like, if anybody should have ideals, it should be us. Like, right. The last time I checked, we believe we serve the God of heaven, and all that. You've heard my shtick on the platform and stuff, but I'm sure that those men and women serving in ministry all those years weren't that way when they came out of Bible school, but they got burned by a churchgoer, they got burned by this person, and you allow that to become the narrative. And I find for myself, it's fine for it to be the picture. It's tough when it becomes the movie. And I think that's the hard part for people. It's one thing to go, yep, that thing sucked, but I can move on and do this. It's another thing when everything sucks, And I just think that for a lot of those young students coming out, they haven't had too many of those moments. And so the reel is short. It's why, Jesus says, unless you become like a little child, you can't come to me. There's an innocence to it. There's a faith that, man, you can do anything. And so it's difficult for people to navigate, on obviously my lane is the faith side of things. you know, 90% of people come to faith in Jesus as a Christian before they turn the age of 18. There's a reason for that. It's difficult when you're in your life and you're 40, 50, 60 years old, and you get kind of jaded, to use your word. And I know it happens in business. I know it happens in, I have friends and stuff. Oh, I'm never getting married. I've seen people get divorced. My parents got divorced. And so they're so jaded towards an institution like that, where I'm like, I would die if I wasn't married. Like my relationship with my wife is so life-giving, and having my kids, and I couldn't imagine it any other way. But because they're so jaded and, well, so many people get divorced, why even bother? You're just doing it for this reason. And I'm like, you don't understand what it's here for. And I think that's probably true in business and so many other arenas. So you had these interviews with the kids.
Yeah. Well, they were kids. Trust me.
Kids. I'm 37. They're kids. Yeah. With the kids, and what were some of the things that kind of stood out to you that would be the difference?
Well, okay. So the way that I overcome that not getting jaded and having so much evidence of how things are is that you almost have to be sort of like willingly naive,
yep,
right?
Totally agree.
So when I'm looking in their eyes, I'm thinking, why are they so enamored with the potential so much? Like, you're looking at me right now. I haven't offered you anything. There isn't in it anything. You're looking at me like I have something you want.
Yep.
But what are you looking for? What do you see? And so, like, that thing that you see is the mystery of not knowing. Like, you don't have bills yet. You don't have insurances yet. You don't have family yet. You have all of the things that makes you do something. So literally anything that you do is exciting to you because it's fresh and it's new, and it adds to your potentialities.
Yeah. And I think coming out too, like, everybody thinks and believes they're going to be the best. It's kind of like when you're in second grade and you play basketball for the first time. Everybody's trying to be LeBron James or Michael Jordan, like, because I can be that. Like, you remember the commercials when we were kids? I want to be like Mike.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because every kid that's out there is buying Jordans and going out, and they wanted to be like Michael Jordan. Somewhere along the line, reality has to be engaged with. Like, I'm 5'10".
You're not.
I'm not Michael Jordan. Like, statistically, I'm not playing in the NBA. That's not happening. Now, I happen to like playing basketball. I can have fun playing basketball. And so there are those intersections where you have to confront reality to some extent. But realistically, there are guys that are 5'6" and 5'7" that play in the NBA. So I might not be Michael Jordan, but to say you can't play in the NBA, you start believing that narrative because you become jaded at some point. So
let me hear these two different conversations. So you take an 18, 19-year-old kid that are coming into college, and they say, hey, if you just give me the opportunity, I'll work for free and I'll wash dishes, I'll do whatever. And then I had one guy that was in his 20s that said, in order for me to have any more minutes at this table, you got to guarantee me $60 million or $60,000, or else I can't entertain this any further. And that distinction between what this person's willing to trade for an opportunity and what this one is convinced they're not willing to do for anything is stark.
I just had this conversation not too long ago with a mentor, and talking about it. And I can remember in ministry early on, especially with early ministry positions, like, man, you just give me a tent and a nickel and we're going to do this thing because this is what I'm built to do.
Yeah.
And all along the way, any job I've had, I've never asked the pay requirements. I never money's never been the reason I've taken something or not taken something. For me, it's always been a little more existential. I feel called to it is the phrase I would use. But when we came to Bridge of Hope, Sam and I actually took a $25,000 total pay cut, and we had to find a house to rent. And so it was a total different dynamic. Now, yeah, cost of living was significantly cheaper than New Jersey, so there were some things, but it was a little tight there for the first 8 or 10 months. And for me, I was like, this is it. I'm living the dream. This is amazing. But Sam's like, we can't buy anything. We have to eat rice. Like it was
checking her spreadsheet 19 times. Yep.
And getting us into that spot. And it wasn't terrible, but we were also pregnant with Graham. And so we knew we were adding another kid. And we're like, what about medical? So there was a bunch of that weight early on that I was like, man, just give me a nickel and a roll of duct tape and a tent, and like, we'll make this happen. But I have to, you have to tether that. And as you get older, you have responsibilities. Like, I'm responsible for my 4 kids. Now we can talk about what does that mean? Because some people are like, well, I'm responsible for my 4 kids. So my life has to suck and I'm going to stay at this job forever. Well, no, it doesn't have to. But people do that. They sacrifice the dream for the kids, and then the kids become something that you I'm losing a word here, and I never lose words. You resent. That's the word I was looking for. So kids end up taking on this resentment. Well, because I have to go to work, and dad's got to make the money. And I can't tell you how many times I heard that growing up from my dad. Well, this is how we have stuff. I got to go to work and stuff like that. So don't complain that I'm not here. And always had that negative undertone of resentment because I have to do X or Y or Z, and it's because of you. And I was like, well, no, like you should be out there because of your passion. Don't be out there because of me. And I feel like for my kids, part of my responsibility is demonstrating risk, is demonstrating that you can chase your passions and your dreams, and you can step out in ways and you can fail, and it's okay to do that. I think that's a big part of it. And your whole goal as a parent is not just to keep them safe, but we do that, right? As mom and dad, we go, well, I have kids to take care of. I have a house I have to pay for. So therefore I can't pursue, and we limit ourselves instead of going, well, my ultimate purpose is actually to fulfill this thing over here, and I get to bring my family along with me, and we get to do some things that are really cool and exciting. Yeah, sure, maybe I have to downgrade the house, or maybe I have to navigate something in the short run, but ultimately my mission is my mission.
And how I pick apart sometimes in songs and use wrong usage of the words. When I meet somebody who is an adult and they're looking for reasons why things can't happen, and they're seeking out like those can't and won't and shouldn't and whatever. I ask, I'm a jerk when it comes to this, but I ask those persons, like, really, you can't? Really? Tell me about this can't thing, because I see people over there canning all over the place. What makes you so special that you can't do that one? But the word usage, and I think that part of that jaded process, when you start giving up that there isn't hope, then you start looking for reasons why things can't happen.
Yeah, my dad, my whole life, would say can't means won't. Anytime I would say, oh, I can't do that, he would say, no, you won't do that. I'm like, no, but I'm not strong enough. He goes, no, you won't do it. It's a matter of your will, not a matter of your ability. And every time, it was so frustrating as a kid. Yeah, I can remember it as young as probably Abraham. Dad, I can't. You won't. There's a difference. It may take you a little bit. You may have to figure some things out. You may have to, today, you may have to watch a YouTube video or two. You may have to get around somebody and learn some things. But just because you can't do it right now in this moment, or just because you don't have the ability, you can will yourself to it. I watched a video of Kobe Bryant. I thought this was fantastic. He was being interviewed by Lewis Howes, and he asked him, from 12 years old to 14, up until 12, something like that, Kobe had never really touched a basketball. He didn't start playing basketball till he was like 10, 11, 12, something like that. And from 12 to 14, he went from not playing basketball at all to being the best player in the state. And he asked me, he's like, how did you do that? And he goes, I played 3 hours every day. And he goes, if you think about it, most of the kids in, even the good kids aren't playing an hour a day. They're playing maybe an hour or two every day during the season, but I played 365 days, 3 hours every day. He was driven by this passion. Now, at 12, you probably told him, you can't be the best player in the state. Right. You don't have the skills and stuff like that. Probably correct at that point, but he was able to put a chip on his shoulder, show up and work, and said, I'll show you that I will be the best player. And I love that. Same thing with, you think about guys in other arenas of sports. Tom Brady just retired, and, here he is, pick 199. He barely didn't play a ton in college, and, just got picked up, and then all of a sudden, Drew Bledsoe gets hurt. He steps in and he becomes the greatest quarterback of all time. And everybody looks at that and go, oh, what a Cinderella story. But I guarantee you, because I've heard his stories, I've watched some of his Instagram, TikTok, or whatever, homie works harder than anybody else. And yeah, maybe in the beginning there, he wasn't the Tom Brady that he is now, but Cant didn't limit him. Right. He showed up every day earlier, stayed later, worked harder. And I think that's the mindset. And when you have these young people coming out of college, for them, like, what can I do? What do you mean can't?
Right.
It has no definition. But you get somebody, you know what? They've sacrificed themselves in their 30s and 40s. And, well, this is just what we have to do. Right? We got to make a living.
Help me say that word. It's naivete. Now, how do you say that? Naivete?
Naivety.
So anyway, so
what'd you put in the water?
But how we choose to like be super practical, total objective, and ones that we feel that we can be stupid about. And it's about reversing that. If you want to take that childlike naivete, say it like that, and that's it. I don't care. That's
so it's naive.
Naivete.
Naivete.
Naivete. It sounds so classic.
Oh man. Who would have thought that that word would derail us? But there it is.
So anyway,
we're gonna do a cooking show next week.
You can wield that any way you want. So if you're like, if you use the blind naivete about a relationship, where you're blind hope about something that has potential, but then you can't do the same. Like, well, I'm going to believe into this opportunity over here. Why that one gets strict, practicality, and that one gets blind hope. And you have choices in whether or not which one gets which.
Well, it's interesting too, because some parents even build that into their kids. So they come into college with measured hopes and measured, because mom and dad told me, well, you can do certain things, but you can't do everything.
Yes,
and they want to kind of, well, I don't want to set them up for failure. They'll say like, and if we get their hopes up too much, or whatever, it's not going to be, it won't be good. And I think to myself, I would rather get their hopes up and them fall flat on their face and figure out how to pick themselves up and do it again. Like to me, that's where I've learned the most and I've grown the most. When I went all in, I pushed my chips to the middle of the table and said, this hand's awesome, we're going to play it. And it crashed and burned. And I went, oh, all right, next round, let's play.
That's right.
And that there's strength in that. I think Jordan Peterson says, you have to let your kids do dangerous things carefully without stopping them, is the way that he put it. And there's a couple of videos on TikTok, showing kids like doing stuff that, as a dad, I'm like, oh no. But he's saying like, you have to give them space to skin their knee, to bust their face. Now, you don't want them to die.
Right.
There's a fine line, but you have to give them that space to pursue some things that are outside of your comfort zone as a parent. That's how they're going to grow. It's how they're going to learn, or you're going to handicap them for the rest of their life. And a lot of parents do that. So when their kids get into college or the workforce, everything's very measured. It's very calculated. And, we're not going to take a risk there. We can't afford to do that or whatever.
Yeah. Parents, though, think that if they don't say those things, then if they say you can be anything without the little asterisks, that they don't trust them if they don't become president, because parents said whatever. So, but again, like I'm, with Ryan, I don't govern what he thinks is possible. Like I look to him and those students down at YSU is something I need to be more like.
Yeah.
Because we think we're giving them the information and we have way more to learn from them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I love getting around people that are fresh in that regard. It's the best way to describe it. Sometimes people, you've just been doing the same thing for so long, you're just stale. And you get around and you're like, all right, I know you're going to tell me, we have, when you cast vision, you have people that will pull out their shotgun and shoot down your ideas, right? You'll throw an idea out. And on a team, yes, I need detailed people. They're going to say, all right, if we're going to do that, it's going to cost this. We need to do this. And they're going to get their spreadsheets out. But your job is to figure out how to do that, not how not to do that. And there's a huge difference in that. So when you come into these arenas and you get these people in workplaces, some of these young people are great because they'll get on a team and they like the fact that it's not going to happen doesn't enter into their vocabulary.
No, not at all.
And you get some people that have been at the job a little bit, and I struggle with these type of people when they get around the table. We'll throw out, hey, we need to do da 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 da, and they have 19 reasons for why we don't need to do what we're doing. I'm like, I can't function with a team. Like, we're executing that. That flag's in the ground. You can come on board and bring some solutions with you, but anytime somebody brings something up, they're ready to and they're mowing things down. That type of person doesn't need to be in a dream session because they'll kill a dream. That type of person, you need to put on the execution session where you come and go, here's the idea that we're going to do. This is the strategy that we have for it. Now you figure out how to pay for it. You figure out how much we need to spend on this, how many volunteers or whatever it is. Because you put the wrong people in the wrong place and they'll kill good dreams.
Let me tell you about there's sometimes where I'm in that dream killer mode. Like I get people who want to start new businesses and they come to me in sort of like a partnership agreement to get them started, right? Because they don't have something that they need. So I had one guy that sat down at my table and said, I would like to open a restaurant. Okay, he sat in front of me and said, and my first question to people, no matter what, is I say, okay, if I get into a partnership with you, you have to promise me that you will be willing to do anything to make this restaurant successful. So willing to put up the time, willing to put the resources to make sure that it's successful. And the first thing that came back out of their mouth was, well, I have a lot of responsibilities and I like to make sure that I have enough time for family time. Right. So immediately when I say do whatever's necessary, they went to, like, if the school district needs a little bit of money, right, they went right to the only thing they could think of, like, let's cut busing, like the most painful, the only thing, like, I meant like working early in the morning or cutting out Netflix or things that weren't the worst thing imaginable. But those are the I like to ferret that out in the beginning. Like, I want to know, like, what they would put on the chopping block if it meant to feel the most amount of pain for either them or myself. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're probably not ready for this yet until you can warm up to the fact that you would be willing to do whatever it takes to make this thing successful.
Yeah, that whatever it takes mentality is not it's not in a lot of people. I mean, let's just be realistic with it. Everybody has, their limits. And I know I've used this quote before, but when you're 40% done, or when you think you're done, you're only 40% done. But a lot of people are like, well, that's what I'm willing to give. And there's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with measuring that out with employees. But if you want to start a business, you want to start a venture, you're going to have to understand that this is like an all-in thing. And so, even at church, like as the pastor of the church, like I'm all in. Like I'm there. All right, we need to take care of this or take care of that. Sometimes it's not my area of expertise. If there's a hole in the roof, like, all right, I'll be there. I'll carry a bucket. Like, tell me what I got to do. Now we have great people that step into those spots, and some are employees and some are volunteers. But I understand that for every employee, they have different goals. Like they're not sitting up at night like I am thinking about Bridge of Hope.
Right.
They're going home and hang out with their family and thinking about next investment, vacation, whatever, or they have some other goal or thinking about softball or whatever, and that's okay. For me though, I always have to tether that, because sometimes when I get people on a team, I think everybody's as committed as I am, and then it gets frustrating when you're like, well, yeah, we got to put the extra time in, or we got to do whatever, and then sometimes you're blown away by who's more committed than you thought they were, and that's always exciting. How do you manage that with your employees, with people that work for you? Because obviously they're not sitting up thinking about Youngstown Studio or Youngstown Computers or any of your other ventures. They're not, it's not eating a hole in their heart that, they're not caring about the spreadsheets, or are we going to be able to, make rent or whatever it is. You're thinking about that. You're carrying the weight of that. They're just like, all right, yeah, I'll be there at 9:30 or whatever. Tell me what I need to do. And they might be great at their job. And then when it comes time to check out, all right, Joe, see you tomorrow. They're not going to care if you get a call at 8:00 at night from a pissed off customer or whatever. You're going to handle that because you're the business owner. How do you navigate that?
So I have two methods. So the first thing I have to do is, on a regular basis, maybe once a quarter, every 6 months, I have to ask you, like, what your goal is, like, what's your game plan and what's important to you right now. Okay. So if you're looking to have a baby, if you're looking to buy a house, if you're looking to go on vacation, and because I ask often enough, because those things change what's important, I have to be able to get on your team first in order for you to have any expectations that you're going to get on my team. Because I don't want a person that punches the clock and watches the clock 100%. And bails. I do not want you around. So I'm going to ask you to do things that I wouldn't traditionally ask an employee, because I expect you to have the ability to ask me to do things that you wouldn't normally ask an employer. I want to be different so that we're not the same, because the same sucks ass. It really does.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I think, I see my job, not just with our employees, but with our volunteers. Like, when I look at people that call Bridge of Hope home, I'm looking at them going, well, how do I help them fulfill their calling? Or how do I help them fulfill the thing that they, are being driven towards in this season? And, looking at, the landscape of our team, for instance, we had a young lady part-time in the office, and she's been looking for full-time. She's coming into her early 20s. She's very passionate, ready to go, all that. And we didn't have a slot really for that for her. And so this opportunity came up, and she came in, she was super nervous, comes in my office and was like, I think I'm going to interview. They have a part-time position, so I could still work here at the church. I work there. She goes, they also have a full-time position. I was like, listen, you need to go for the full-time position. And I was like, and if you get it, we will be so happy for you. Like, have at it. And today was her first day at her full-time
Beautiful.
position. She got this director of it's a nonprofit, and she gets to run kids programs and kids camps, and it's going to be such a home run for her.
Right.
Now she's still going to be a part of the church, but her role is just going to change in
Right.
in the day-to-day. But like, I want everyone to know, not just our paid staff, but everyone. Like, I want Joe to have the best businesses and all of that. I want, Frank and so many of the others. Like, I want them to succeed. Like, all right, if you're in this season where you need this, how can I come alongside and help that become a reality? And it's amazing when you care about people like that, and you turn around and you have a cause, or you have something that you need to step in and do. I turn around, all those people are like, "What do you need, Pastor? Let's get it done."
Yeah. And let me tell you that there's a vacancy that I see out of most people out there that, it sounds nice to say that I want to help somebody work on their goals, but would you know that a majority of people don't have something that they are actively working on? So a lot of times I start with, something that I can tell them about my goals, and people are like super eager to run head first to help me work on my goals. It's almost like training people how to dream a little bit and have a goal whatsoever. They watch other people having goals like, hey, can I have a goal too? That seems like a good idea.
Yeah, no, that's very true. A lot of people come in like, I don't know what my purpose is. I'm not really sure. I'm good at this, but I don't even know if I like that, but I happen to be good at it. And so I'm like, well, start there and then let's build. I love to put people in positions of their passion and let them run. Dave Ramsey has a saying that you should hire thoroughbreds and let them run, get out of the way.
Right.
And if you do a good job picking the right thoroughbred, you know where they're going to run, you know what their passion is. I hate trying to recruit people for, well, I need you to do this, and then you're plugging a hole with somebody that might not be there, and then I'm running around trying to light a fire under their butt to get them to go do something. I would rather someone come to me as like, man, my passion is fill in the blank, and I can go, great. You know what? We got this whole avenue over here. How would you like to step into that? Oh, you mean I can do that? Yeah. And I will give you resources, and we'll help you recruit a team, and you can run and do that. Well, and the light that goes on. And then for me, I don't even have to check back. They check in with me like, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that, because so much of what I do is with volunteers. You're not holding a paycheck over anybody's head. So you have to lock into passion to get them to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's scary. If I can't get someone to dig through their life and get excited about something that they're working on, I mean, it's bad news, and it's a dead deal. Like, I really don't know, because that's like one of the major motivating forces is chasing something down and killing it. I mean, it really is what makes us alive, right?
So true. So true. The hunt, the pursuit, the adventure. Absolutely. It really ignites us to another level. When you get domesticated is when it's a problem.
Yeah. Now, okay. So the other side of that is went right out of my brain. That always happens at this.
You're going to talk about the jaded ones?
Yeah. All right, you keep talking. It'll hit me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think where Joe's going is on the other side of that coin is you have some people that are 40, 50, 60 years old. And the way we started this conversation was how do we return them back to a sense of awe and interest and passion, rather than the jaded side of things. It's one thing to take somebody who's pure and innocent. They haven't experienced the world. They're not really wet behind the ears at all. Like, they're just, just here. They're all green, and who knows what, whether they're going to be successful or fail. You don't know how they're going to respond to failure. I have a saying that I've heard from mentors and stuff is, don't trust anybody who doesn't have any scars. And there's a lot of truth to that. Like, if you haven't been in the battle and you haven't had some failures, you haven't had some wounds, I'm not sure what I can trust you with just yet, because life is hard. And there are times where you're going to downright fall on your face. And I need to know that you have the courage and the fortitude to get yourself back up. In the Bible, it talks about don't lay hands on a novice. Don't lay hands on somebody too soon. Don't give them your blessing and pronouncement of leadership until you're sure that they can carry that mantle. And, there've been a few times where I'm like, I got excited about somebody who is, I'm sure you've had this, where they're just like, I'm so excited. And you're like, yes. And then it was just, it fizzled like in 3.5 seconds. They were excited in a moment, but it really wasn't their long-term passion. And so then you stepped in, you got behind, and then you're like, and I know in a church sense, you get into that spot and you lose credibility. So you take time and you watch and you wait and you evaluate, and then you put people in their passions. But if you do it too quickly, you can get somebody that will just sprout up and fizzle out. On the other hand, you get these people who are burnt out at 40, 50, 60 years old. And, I don't want to serve, I've served in church before or whatever, or in the job, I've done this job before. I know everything. And you're just like, all right, well, I don't know if I'm able to teach anything. I'm probably not going to hire you at that point. Right. And it can be very challenging. I would take the novice with no scars, doesn't know anything, that's passionate and excited, because I can train that.
Right.
Man, trying to turn somebody who's jaded and, been in your business or been in your church or been in that environment for so long, it's tough.
And so, like, I thought of the premise, it was worded better in my brain before, so you'll have to whatever, but as sort of like culture gives this incessant reminder that things are so bad that you shouldn't dream for anything and you're just going to be enslaved to the process.
Yeah.
It kind of beating kids out of even having those hopes that anything is possible. You think like even, race relations. I mean, if you take generations of, racial minorities and just tell them that no matter what they do, it's an unfair deal and they're just whatever, how many of those people will just believe it by default because their elders and people around them told them that way? It's a shame.
The narratives that we build for our kids is so important. The narratives in education and sports and all of that. You have a couple of recurring themes narrative wise. The players change and the details change, but the principles are still the same. And so you have the narrative of the parent that's living vicariously through their kids, and there's tons of pressure heaped on them and all of that. You have the narrative of the helicopter mom that just won't let her kids do anything. They got to wear helmets to everything, and they can't do this and they can't do that because she's terrified they're going to get hurt. And you have a number of those kind of threads that go through, and nobody stops to think about, like, what is this doing to the next generation? Like, how am I shaping Charlotte, Graham, Benjamin, and Abraham? Sure, there's some things they need protected from. Absolutely. Are there some things that they need to experience safely, even though it's dangerous? Absolutely. I'll never forget, we were with you at the Canfield Fair. Benjamin rode his first roller coaster. Mm-hmm. Graham was terrified, wouldn't go on. Charlotte was kind of like, whatever. I think her and Ryan went on the sea ship or whatever. But Benjamin and your wife went on, and my wife and a couple others, they went on a roller coaster, and he lit up like a Christmas tree. Now, roller coasters, are they dangerous? Yeah, I mean, I guess you get hurt. I don't particularly, not my favorite thing in the world.
I don't know. My batting average on roller coasters are that I've never been hurt on one.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been hurt on one.
Very low potential.
It's fair. But, the fear for a kid to watch it go so fast, and to give him an environment where I think got to sit with my wife or your wife, and he lit up. And now anytime we go, he's like, we're riding roller coasters. We went to Kalahari, and he's like, I'm riding water roller coasters. He was the first one on there. My other two are a little more gun shy. But here he is at 6 years old, leading the way and watching his other two siblings watch him do it a couple times.
What if you constantly enforce the fact that they're so dangerous and you should never take it? That's what would have resonated.
Correct. Absolutely. Words are powerful. Graham came home and he had to write an opinion piece in school. He was very excited. He got an A on the opinion piece. He was proud of himself, and he wanted to read it to everybody because he wrote an opinion piece about his brother.
Oh no!
And he started
opinionated about this. I'm sure
he started reading, and it was. I think he thought he was being complimentary at some level, but it was not complimentary. He talked about how Benjamin is angry, shy, and one other word. And so he gets about halfway in, and Benjamin is crying as Graham's doing. He goes, "I can be happy," and I'm like, "Oh no!" I was like, Sam, we took this, and he's like, "But I got an A on it." I'm like, "You did a great job writing that, but we're never reading it again," And it put me in this weird spot as a dad where I'm like, yeah, Graham, that was actually really well written and thought out, but he's not angry. He's passionate. Like how do we shape this in a way? Right. And, but Benjamin really, he's not, he's passionate, but he's not, in that space, but he got pretty emotional about it. So I have been going out of my way to reinforce, every time I see Benjamin, I'm like, how's my passionate, happy little boy? And I'm like, at nauseum, I'm like, I'm going to say, even if it's annoying to him, because I know, for him to cry when his brother read that, I know that marked him in some way. And for me to overcome that, I'm going to have to pound the drum on that stuff. And I had a good talk with Graham about it. And genuinely, I think he thought he was just describing his brother and he was not being mean in any way. But I'm like, we have to choose our words with our siblings, and you have power in your words. So,
I did this little, it's not really an experiment, but it was something that I spent like a couple of weeks doing every time that I had a interaction with a stranger, where I would pick something up about them and give them a compliment on something just to watch to see what they did. Like, what do you think they did?
Smiled.
Totally changed demeanor and mannerisms, and they totally up. It's like people are so starved for those positive things. And I didn't BS anybody. The compliment that I made was something of note, right? But I just watched how much of an effect it had on them.
There's a couple of TikTok accounts where people will walk up, obviously filming, and just meet a random stranger and make a compliment, and they'll zoom in like on their face or whatever. It's really cool to watch. You're absolutely right.
So yeah, words really do have an effect. And during our meetings or during the interviews, like I try to use as many positive reinforcing.
Yeah, because even if they're not going to work here, I want them to walk out of that
going, man, I had a better day. You know, you're smart, you're competent, you communicate well, you look very good. All of those things, and you watch these people like, oh, I feel really good about myself today. Can I come to an interview tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. To go back to the premise as we kind of started talking about this, I don't, it's interesting. We talk about youthful. You got the 19, 20, 21 coming out with that kind of innocence and passion, all that. But here's the thing that I don't want people to hear is that if you're 40, 50, 60, that, well, that ship sailed. You can reignite your passion, innocence, but you're going to have to guard your heart. I used that scripture in the beginning. Like, what you consume with your eyes and your ears matter. What you say out of your mouth matters. And I know it seems so small, and it's like, oh, it's not that big a deal. It's not about what you can handle. It's about what you're programming yourself to do. And so every bit of data that you're putting in, movies and music and words that you're speaking, people that you're around and what they're saying, all of that is programming your mind. And so for me, like sarcasm, too much of it for me is hard. Certain negative people, that kind of deal, I can take it in small doses, and then I'm like, I have to go wash off. Like, I'm like, go get me around somebody that's gonna build me up.
And on the other side, like when you do this and you're making, compliments to a total stranger, your brain does some weird stuff too. It feels a little silly. It feels a little bit like, why am I doing this? Is this my place? Am I crossing boundaries? Am I, going to make someone feel awkward and whatever? I'm like, shut up. That's what the innocence of these thoughts are. You're on the right direction when you're feeling a little silly.
No, it's so true. When we got Philly as a puppy, so the difference between New Jersey and Ohio was like staunch to us. So when we were in New Jersey, we lived in a parsonage, and it was on a dead end street. And so there was about, I don't know, a dozen or so houses on the street, and the school was right behind us. And we knew none of our neighbors. Nobody came over and was like, hey, welcome to the neighborhood, any of that stuff. There wasn't, everybody's in their houses. I mean, they drove cars past us. Some of them walked or, did exercise and went past the house. Nobody said anything to anybody. And then we got a dog a year in, and having a puppy is the most disarming thing for people, because everybody's like, puppy, and they want to go over and they want to pet the dog. We met in a matter of like 6 weeks. All of our neighbors, their friends, oh, this is my dad, he's visiting from wherever, we want to see the puppy or whatever. Like, that for us was like one of those things, is like, wow, these people were dying for connection before. The puppy was the avenue for it, but there was just such a disconnect. Then we come to Ohio, and we're not even moved into our house. We got neighbors coming over saying, hey, can we help carry stuff in? I'm like, who are you? Put my stuff down. And we had people, someone baked us cookies and came over and like, hey, just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood and stuff. Beautiful. And I remember getting the cookies thinking like, does that have anthrax on them? I was totally skeptical, because, it's much more compartmentalized culture-wise where I came from. And so it's taken me a little bit, but that Midwest almost has a Southern hospitality type feel to it, but it creates an environment for those compliments and the things like you were talking about. Yeah. Like when they were bringing those cookies, or they're just being nice, but I was like, that's strange. It's all about wiring and atmosphere and conditioning. And so if you're positioning yourself in a spot, I want to position myself in a spot where it doesn't feel weird to give compliments. And that's a different headspace to be in.
Yeah. And so like if you walked around your street and so you'd feel weird doing this. You go to your neighbor's house, you knock on the door, and you're like, hey, I just want to let you know that you look really nice today, and you walked away. That would feel a little weird, right?
Sure.
And I saw a statistic, and I think it was actually, I was in a church and they were talking about how we don't do socialization. We don't get to know the people they're closest. To say the question was like, do you know your neighbors' first names? Do you know if they have any kids? Do you know what their dog's name is? And the challenge was to go explore the people that are closest to you and just try. You have a week to dig up information on the people that you should already know this to, but see if you can walk up to them and say, hey, do you have any kids? They go to any school? And make a list. They made a little sheet that you filled out to say 6 people in your neighborhood, and see if you can find something out that you didn't know and try to find a non-awkward way to uncover that information. It's an interesting exercise.
That is very interesting. Very interesting. Well, it's about time. And use your words wisely. Keep your innocence and your optimism and your passion. It's important.
There we go.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content, and we would appreciate you sharing the videos and the word about us. Thank you.